In this episode, we'll gain insight into how we could release ourselves from stress, find joy, and cultivate gratitude. Helping us on this journey is an assistant professor, a director, a certified consultant, a humanitarian, an author, and the co-host of a podcast called When East Meets West. Welcome to the show, Pete. How are you doing?
Tobi, I'm so good and so glad to be here. And who does not want to have less stress and a little bit more, gratitude in their life? So let's bring it to them.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I'm really looking forward to learning so much about how we could relieve ourselves of so much stress and even bring more joy, more light, more gratitude into our lives. And that's why I'm excited to speak with you. But before we go into all of the numerous questions I have in my head, I would like to first, learn a little bit about yourself, like your life journey, like what's inspired you or inspired your interest in psychology and wellness.
It's funny, we were talking about New York, and I was, born and raised in New York, and I was studying, at university, and I was also bartending at a certain point. And during the bartending, you realize like how much you interact with people, you connect. And then a good friend of mine said, you're really good at that. Why don't you get a degree in psychology? And so I went from bartending to then getting a PhD in psychology.
Wow. I mean, how do you do that? How do you go from bartending at a bar to going to college or university and getting a PhD? What was that journey like for you? What was that transition like for you?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's, the American dream part of it. But also when you live in New York, those are things, it's this city that never sleeps. It's all this stuff. And everything's possible in New York, and so you just see that it's, there's nothing that you can't do. And there's also a lot around, right? There's a lot of different sports teams. There's a lot of different universities. And so there was lots of opportunities. And so I was able, to take out some student loans and be able to kind of start, the journey. So I started with a master's degree first, and then I went into the doctoral program. So PhD programs tend to be funded. So you'll get money to go to study for the PhD, which was the case. But then, you still end up with lots and lots of loans. That's also part of the American dream. The more you study, the more you have to pay and the more debt you have. So I left with lots of debt, but it was worth it. It was investment, So as a professor, I always help students kind of take a different perspective of that student loans or kind of paying for grad school is just like any kind of investment. If you buy a house to flip it, that's an investment.
Yeah.
So you have to invest in yourself.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, my father always says that the best investment you can make is in yourself, basically, like in terms of education and in terms of what you feed yourself also, like, your personal development, your health, your wellness, and all of that.
Absolutely.
Those are like very vital things. So,
Your father.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure you'll be glad to hear that when he hears this episode. You'll be like, yeah, that's good. Yeah. And you went ahead to right now you've worked with elite and professional athletes, and you use these 4 pillars that I got to find out about also, and these are the the behavioral, holistic, strength-based, and wellness pillars. So I was like, I would like Dr. Pete to walk me through these pillars. I want to understand how I could also make use of all of these pillars.
Yeah, I mean, the pillars that I work from, they exist. It's not like, I didn't create them. There's just these sort of like holistic ways, right? Like there's no one way to be well. Like your dad would say, get educated, eat well, things like that. But there's no one way to do all that. So I, help people figure out which their way is. For some people might include a nutritionist or an acupuncturist or a spiritual guide or a life coach. I mean, there's lots of different ways that you can do this stuff. So that's holistic, just thinking about it's not just one thing. Behavioral means that we're trying to measure what we're doing. So behaviorism kind of operationalizes everything. So you define emotions, you define, cadence of behaviors. How often am I doing something? How much do I need to do it? So if someone's coming in just kind of thinking about like, if they're just thinking about, how to, be better at, I want to learn how to meditate. Okay, cool. Well, then let's meditate for 3 minutes twice this week, or let's, really kind of break it down to that level, I think is like critical to all that type of stuff. And so mindfulness is always a piece of this, and also just being like integrative, so that again, it's like, it's not just one sort of thing. You also, you need to be strength based, as you mentioned, meaning we all have strengths and weaknesses, but a lot of high performers highlight a lot of their weaknesses more, to really focus on their weaknesses, but you've got strengths. And, in mindfulness, we say you have to like celebrate the small victories. And so that's one thing that high performers forget to do. So we might film 2 podcasts, go work out, edit 2 papers, talk to 3 friends, see all this stuff. And we're like, oh, I was kind of lazy today. Like you'll do all these things and you forget that like your baseline is actually something to be celebrated. So yeah, that's the way that I kind of use the pillars.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. And I love what you mentioned last, like, sometimes we tend to forget our strengths. We tend to forget what we did, what we are able to achieve, or what we've achieved already. And then we look into the weaknesses. And that's one thing that, affects a lot of us. And I believe that's one thing that gratitude helps us to avoid also. And that's why I would like to ask you, like, how do you make use of gratitude? And even when attached or when related to strength-based pillar also, like, how do you make use of gratitude to improve your wellness, to improve your well-being also?
Yeah, I mean, gratitude is something that is free. There's infinite amounts of it. So just a way that you can be thankful, thankful for yourself, for the people around you, for, even for some of the pain, like none of us have chosen to have pain in our life, and yet we all have it. And so being thankful for those opportunities. If I don't, for example, have anxiety, then I don't know how to deal with it. If I've never been injured in sport, then I don't know how to be injured. I need to learn how to be injured and how to be able to come back from that. And so it's not easy. I mean, because again, I think a lot of people will hear that and say, oh, well, you're just, minimizing the pain, or that's not that easy to do. And you're right, it's not. But we have to at least create a plan to get there, because, the alternative just holds us down. And I think that's what I realize is a lot of us are our worst enemies. Like we make things a lot more difficult than they need to be.
Oh yeah. I mean, I guess our mind sometimes complicates things than they are, or we could overthink things sometimes, for people that overthink, like myself sometimes. And then that way we make things, how do you say it? You make a mole out of an ant. Oh no, you make a
mountain out of a molehill.
Yes, a mountain out of a molehill. And that happens a lot. I mean, a lot of situations. And when you overanalyze situations, overthink situations, and
absolutely.
When you come from a place of gratitude instead, then you'll be able to break down the mountain, or even break down the mole also, and say, yeah, this is nothing actually. This is, yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, so, when I found out that you work with athletes, my follow-up question was like, okay, I mean, it's okay to know a lot of tips and tools that one could use to improve one's performance, because all these professional athletes, they are always at the top of their game, so it's at high level performance. I'm like, yeah, I would like to tap into that also. I'd like to learn from your expertise, like, what can I do as a person, as a normal non-athletic person? What can I do to improve my overall performance?
I love that you got, that is exciting. You're right. But I will say that there's not one formula, because if there was like the secret formula, I think all teams would be doing it. So it really is individual. So, Tobi, if I was, you were an athlete I was working with, like we'd find like what your kind of secret power or secret sauce is, because it changes. You have to have balance. I will say there's a couple of things that are probably generic. You have to have balance in life. I think a lot of times very easily we lose balance because we are so focused on performance. We actually have to break that down. It's got to be process, not outcome. So how do I focus on just the process of what I'm doing, not if what I'm doing is well or winning? The winning will come, and the performance will come as long as I commit to the process. So that's I think the beauty of what I get to do is like help people kind of figure that process out, figure their formula out, because each person's formula will be different.
Yeah, each person's formula will be different.
Yeah.
Well, like, how can I know what my formula is? Like, if I get to work with you, for example, what are we going to do in order to find out what my secret recipes are, and how to get the best out of myself?
Well, keeping with the metaphor, we're just gonna start cooking. We're just gonna start putting some things together, sort of see where they go, and that's the only way you can start. Like just seeing what works and what doesn't work. So you start with small little steps. It might be breaking down like your pre-performance routine. Breaking down some of the stuff that we do within the performance. Breaking down our post-performance routine. Finding ways, what the thoughts are, sort of what they're doing at those moments, and then just kind of looking at it at like a cellular level, like very kind of basic, and then just testing new things out. One thing, for example, that comes to mind is like superstitions. A lot of athletes are very superstitious. I have to put my left sock on first and then my right sock, and I have to eat, spaghetti. And I actually like to challenge those almost immediately. So, okay, put your right sock on tomorrow and let's see what happens. Little things like that, because it's just thoughts. Thoughts are just thoughts. They're not reality. And so we have to kind of come to terms with that and just build a relationship with that.
Yeah, that. Like, just embrace them and don't confuse them as reality. They are just things that flow. Let them flow, and
Yes.
make use of them. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And I could imagine in the process of wanting to improve someone's performance or improve one's personal growth, or on that journey, basically. Sometimes we make mistakes, sometimes we stumble, sometimes we relapse, and then at the same time we want to still always experience joy throughout the journey of becoming better being, or just evolving, basically. What do you, from experience, what do you do to always find joy, even in the darkest moments, even when things don't go the way you want them to go? Even let's use example of an athlete, for example. You win the game even after practicing all day and all night. What do you do, to stay joyful?
Yeah, I love the question. I was looking behind me because there's a quote on my wall that I think will be helpful. You'll never be brave if you don't get hurt. You'll never learn if you don't make mistakes, and you'll never be successful if you don't encounter failure. And so you talked about both failure and joy in that. Failure is a part of joy, and that's going to sound crazy to people. But you have to feel everything in order to feel joy, and then you get back up, right? Like when you have failures, when you have mistakes, you have to it's how do you rebound? That's what's really critical. And then the joy piece comes from just doing things that align with your values. So what is it that brings me joy? So for me, it's exercise, it's spending time with my animals. I've got 3 dogs. I like cleaning. Those are things that bring joy. Working on a project here and there. A little bit of gardening. I've got a koi pond. Just like, that's fun too. They're going to hibernate soon. Actually, they hibernate as it gets cold, and for the winter they hibernate.
Yeah.
So it's like just little things like that. You just got to do the little things, and then it's part of this recipe that we've talked about. The formula. You got to
Exactly. That was where my mind was going to again. I was like, okay, we have to go back into the kitchen and start cooking different things, finding out what tastes better to you or what works best for you, and then stick with that, and then it brings you joy.
Absolutely. That's exactly what you have to do.
Yeah. But sometimes, some people, of course, it requires a lot of patience and resilience also, because you have to spend hours in the kitchen trying out different dishes, and that's a lot of time. Figuratively, that's a lot of, I would say, it takes a lot of resilience. So what do you do? What do you do in order to strengthen your mental resilience? When, for example, like we talked about, failure and success, and you having relapse, and sometimes it could really hit us hard mentally. How do you stay strong mentally then in all this journey?
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, like the resilience piece of this, and the mental resilience. I think that's something that maybe listeners might not be that familiar with. So resilience is being able to combat adversity. Combat's a strong word, but It's to encounter adversity, to look adversity in the face, smile, and move on, and maybe walk through it. It takes time, it takes energy, and it takes like a whole plan. The mental resilience is the same thing. I think listeners might understand that how to get their body in shape. You do bicep curls, you do tricep curls, you go outside for a run, you go hiking. But what do you do for your brain? Like what's your exercises for your brain? And, I think reading is something that somebody always will say. I think that probably helps. But I don't know if it's a full exercise, because reading is kind of robotic in a way. I think exercises for the brain really have to kind of keep the brain active and like alert and attentive. If tying your shoelaces, you might, as you get older, you don't have to think about, but if you're doing something new, like writing with your non-dominant hand, your brain has to think about it. Right.
Yeah.
And those are things that kind of help to exercise your brain.
Yeah. So it's basically exercising that muscle called your brain so that it stays strong. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like when you mentioned that example, I'm glad you talked about that because I was just thinking also of similar examples to sometimes they say if you brush your teeth, for example, with your right hand, try to brush with your left hand and tie your shoelaces in a different way than you used to, and that way it trains your brain in a different way also.
Absolutely. Yep. You get it. You absolutely get it, Tobi.
Yeah. Do you work with like rewiring the brain pattern, for example, or what do you call it? The neuronal pathway also. Like, are there like some things we could do in order to rewire our brain so that we are much more stronger mentally, or have more mental resilience also?
Yeah, all the things you just said, like brushing your teeth with your other hand, or for like I was a swimmer. And so in swimming, we always swim up the right side of the lane and then down the left side of the lane. And so sometimes you could just switch that up, swim up the left and then down the right. Just doing things differently. Anything you can think of, like if you always do something in a certain way, just do it different. Because the brain kind of gets really pulled and addicted to rigidity. Like it wants everything to be done the same way. It likes order, and order is good, but then it also it's like rote. It just learns that only. And so you want to try and like mix it up a little bit and just try and do something the opposite or a different way.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to make use of this also, I guess, after this conversation also try to switch things up a little bit. Because I'll just think right now about myself, and I have like a set morning routine, for example. And sometimes when I think about it, sometimes I always forget that I've done some part of it already. And then maybe once I'm out of the door on my way to work, I'll be like, did I brush my teeth? and I did, but I just forgot because it's just part of my routine, basically, for example.
Absolutely.
And and it makes me feel like, oh, am I getting too old, or is it just too normal for me already that I just do it robotically, basically?
Yeah. It's everyone has driven somewhere, and if it's somewhere they've driven too many times, all of a sudden they arrive and they're like, I don't really remember going on that road, and so part of it's also because we're like not mindful, like we're just because we're mechanical, like you said, and so then we're not actually in the present moment because we're just muscle memory. We're not having to think about what we're doing or where we're driving, and that can be problematic.
Yeah, that's very dangerous. Yeah, very dangerous. And that's why I really want us to right now talk about your book, which is titled Mindfulness Workbook for Beginners. So I'm like, for someone like me, sometimes I do things mechanically. I'm like, oh, I have to be more mindful. Like, cherish every moment, be mindful in every moment, and understand and know what I'm doing every time and all of that. So I would like to first learn about this workbook. Like, as a beginner myself, what can I learn from this book?
Yeah, well, this is a book that just helps people like generically learn how to do mindfulness. It's not just for athletes or performers or for executives. It could be for anybody. And so we'll have to get you a copy of it so that you can start, your mindful journey. But it just helps people kind of where to start to build some kind of mindfulness practice into their life. So it's very comprehensive, but it's also very accessible. It's simple.
It's simple, yeah. And in the
Yeah.
book, you also share like practical stress relief exercises.
Yeah.
Like I'm very curious to know, like, can you share some of these exercises with me? Because I'm sure, like you yourself, I'm sure you have 1,000 things on your plate and it could get stressful sometimes. So I like to learn already from that. Like, how do you manage the stress? What are some exercises that you do to relieve yourself of stress?
Yeah, this book, it's a workbook, and it's very practical. So there's lots of practices within each chapter. So if there's a chapter, about values, and there'll be values exercises, or about gratitude, be practices geared towards creating joy or gratitude. So things like there's an exercise where maybe you write some stuff you're thankful for, and you put it in a bowl once or twice a week, and then every couple months you like open them up and read it, or you write something you're really scared of and then you crumple it up and throw it away, or you do a body scan, like starting with your feet all the way to the top of your head. Just exercises that kind of really tap into each of the different areas of mindfulness. Mindfulness, for listeners is on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmental. And so there's lots of different ways that you can do it. There's no right or wrong way, but just trying to find a way to make connection with the present moment as effectively as possible.
Yeah. In connection with the present moment as soon as possible, as effective as possible. Yeah.
Yes.
And on this journey of, recording podcasts, I've gotten to learn a lot about breath work, for example, like, taking intentionally breathing and using some techniques to breathe. And that helps you to, come back to the moment or be mindful. And also meditation too. Meditation also helps in that way. I don't know, do you also meditate? Are there like some meditational practices that you carry out that helps you also to be mindful?
Yeah, it's the way I think about it is mindfulness is like the umbrella, and meditation is one of the sort of spokes underneath it. There's lots of different ways you can be mindful. Meditation is one way. I do meditate. I've studied Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, for about almost 15, 20 years. So that's really what's helped to inform my mindfulness practice. And so I try and meditate twice a day. Historically, you would do it on sunrise and sunset. So here in America, we work longer than that. So I'm at work before the sunrise, and I usually get home as the sun is setting. But I'll find times in the morning and night to sit on the cushion and create some space to meditate.
Oh yeah, and that's awesome. Like, there are like a million kinds of meditation practices out there. Like, which one do you practice? What's the best? Not the best one, but which one is the one you do it?
I love that you corrected yourself. It's like you knew I was going to say there's no best.
Yes.
There's no best. So I just do Zen Buddhism, which is pretty. It's simple is the word that comes into mind, but it's not simple. But it's silent, and so we do a lot of silence. Sometimes we do use koans. Koans are Zen teachings that help to untangle the brain. The brain is pretty noisy and it's very tangled, and so sometimes we use these koans to help to untangle the brain. I use them a bit. I work through them with my teacher over the years, but in general, I really yearn for just that like silent, still sitting. It's something very powerful and peaceful that is super, super effective. And I just I had a teacher once who said, I just can't wait to get on the cushion, and I just didn't understand it. I was like, Miriam, what are you talking about? Like, because I was sort of afraid of the cushion, or I was like watching the clock, like when would it end? But now I get it, like now I can sit, and it's just very, very powerful and peaceful.
And what do you do when those thoughts come by? Like, I mean, for myself, like you said correctly, like our brain could be very, very busy and tangled up. And for me, I don't know, I'm always thinking 1,000 or 1,000,000 thoughts per second, for example. And I'm just imagining myself being on the cushion, and then my mind is just racing, and my brain is just working all the mathematics possible. What do you do when all of that happens?
You just sit. You just take a deep breath, and you're just sitting on the cushion. If thoughts come, and then thoughts go. Just like waves in the ocean, they come and they go. So you're just learning how to be with it. There's nothing you can do with, you just let them come and you let them go.
Oh, we just let them flow, basically. Like,
That's
no way
it.
of
Let it flow.
out.
Yeah, like open, and eventually the faucet is a little less drippy. It's not a full flow.
That's good. I'm learning it from this conversation already. Well, Pete, I would like to know, like, when you started out on all of this journey, like, did you like set goals to say maybe in a year or 2 years, I'm going to be much more mindful? And I'm sure you also have like you had career goals, or you have career goals like I'm going to become a professor, I'm going to become this, or for your personal growth, for your personal development, did you also set goals to say, okay, I'm going to be at this level at this particular time, or for your mental health also, I'm going to be much more mindful, or you know, much more resilient also at this particular time?
Yeah, it's a good question because a lot of high performers will want those goals. The goal is to not have goals. The goal is just to practice mindfulness. Very hard. So no, I didn't. Well, I did when I sat down with my teacher the first time. I remember it very clearly. I always tell the story because I just said, like, what do I got to do? Like, how do I get to be the best, the best Zen meditator, Do I have to stop drinking, stop eating meat? What do I got to do? And he just said, you're exactly where you need to be. And, so it's a Zen lesson, straight away. So yeah, no, you just want to really let go of goals and, just sit and just practice. That's the process.
Yeah, just sit and just practice. I know it will sound very simple for someone like me. It's not. When I'm honest, it's not simple. Just sit and practice. But yeah, that's all it takes.
It's hard. It's very hard.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah.
Wow. So for people out there, for example, who would like to get the book, what's the best way to get the book?
Yeah, officialdrpete.com has everything. So that has, books and has all my socials. So feel free to, check me out and find me there.
Awesome. Let's place the link to your website in the show notes of this episode. So I encourage everyone out there who's interested in getting the book to click on the link, copy the link, and get the book already. And for people out there, I know you have a podcast also, and you have other services that you offer. I don't know if you'd like to talk a little bit about them and how we could, enjoy some of these services also.
Yeah, I mean, it's all on the website, but I will say I've got on air with the official Dr. Pete, and then I've got When East Meets West with Nikki Rubin. And When East Meets West is a cool podcast because what we do is we blend Eastern spiritual practices, so like my Zen training, with Western behavioral science. So kind of how it all comes together. And so that's our When East Meets West, because it's the East spirituality with Western behaviorism. And I'm in New York and she's in California. So I'm on the East Coast and she's on the West Coast.
The West Coast. That makes it much more beautiful because you bring the different personalities also into all the conversation.
Yes. Exactly. Yes.
Awesome. One more time, the links will be in the show notes of this episode. Get across there. I know you are available also on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram. All the information are also available in the show notes of this episode. I'm really grateful for this wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for sharing about yourself, about wellness, and what we could do to become much more mindful. I really appreciate it.
Hey there, podcast enthusiasts. Are you ready to add a little sparkle to your day? If you're loving the insightful conversations and captivating stories on Mirror Talk Podcast, here's a friendly nudge to hit that subscribe button. By subscribing, you'll never miss out on the empowering messages and thought-provoking discussions we bring to your ears. But wait, there's more. We're all about spreading positivity and inspiration, and you can be a part of it too. How? By sharing the love with your friends and family. Share this episode with your loved ones, and let's create a ripple effect of empowerment and growth together. And hey, if you've been enjoying what you hear, why not take a moment to leave us a glowing 5-star review? Your feedback fuels our passion to keep delivering content that resonates with you. So hit that subscribe button, share the love, and leave us a review. Let's keep the conversation going and spread the Mirror Talk magic far and wide. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, your support means the world to us.